Fallout 3 and DLC is fun for me. On Yeti Dan TV. Hello, welcome to the Yeti Den. We are going to talk about Fallout 3 Complete Edition's DLC story add-ons. So, the year is 2008 and the Xbox 360 is 3 years into its life cycle. And Todd Howard is about to release the first ever Bethesda published and developed Fallout title. Hot off the heels of Oblivion's success, game developer and the Elder Scrolls veteran Todd Howard is tasked with the tall order of helming Interplay Entertainment's signature classic computer role-playing game series, Fallout, while respectfully adapting it for a wider audience. In other words, take a beloved isometric turn-based title and morph it into Oblivion with guns. In the summer leading up to Fallout 3's big Bethesda release, Todd Howard spoke to game developer about the anticipation and mystery behind his next game. Has a difference in balance of scale changed that process at all? I know that when I've talked to Pete Hines in the past, he said that you guys are really focusing on a little less scope but a lot more depth. How does that play out from a development standpoint? Todd Howard: well, the game's gotten a lot bigger, so it hasn't gotten any differently there. It has almost as much content as Oblivion, but in different ways. One of the metrics we use, our data is relatively the same size. We're using similar tools and things, and the main data file for Fallout is much larger than Oblivion. That tells us that we've put a lot of stuff in, whether that's the rocks or whatever. I don't know, I haven't really analyzed it, but there's 20-30% more dialogue in Fallout, so that's a lot of stuff to record. We've gone through the same process there, so that's still a ton of content. Next question. As a game director, and it's not like this is the first time you've done this, how do you even approach something like this? It seems like such a fairly monumental task on two fronts. One, it's just the issue of making a game this big, but you guys have done that before. But then there's also the issue of inheriting that IP. Not that you're doing it alone, but it seems like a pretty substantial undertaking. How do you approach that? Todd Howard: the good thing with Fallout is that from a workflow standpoint, it's similar to what we do with Elder Scrolls, where it's very big and it's an established world. Whether or not we've established it or somebody else, the Elder Scrolls world is so big that no one person can remember it at all. So when we think up stuff, we have to go to research it. Like, what did it say in this book in Daggerfall? It's so much stuff. So we go through the same work with Fallout. And frankly, it was a very nice change of pace for us. We were really excited to do the project. So I think we're kind of used to doing it. I don't know that there's something specific I could point to and go, here's how we go about it. The one thing we do is we lay out the world. One of the first things we do is draw the map and come up with the people and places. And the rest of it comes out of that. I mean, in Fallout, we knew we wanted to have vaults. I usually come up with, this is bizarre, the first thing I always come up with is the beginning of the game and the interface. I don't know why. Like, how does it start and what's the interface? There's no reason for that. It's just what goes on. And we knew we wanted to start in the vault and play through. I've always been interested in games that just start and you play them. The character generation is part of the game. An early influence is Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. End quote. As you may know, I've been collecting Fallout games physically while also playing through the series and sharing my thoughts on how these games feel today. This month, I've gone back to Fallout 3's DLC offerings to cap off my Xbox Series X playthrough while exploring the outer edges of this iconic RPG series. Since re-entering the Xbox ecosystem in 2021, it has been a blast diving into Bethesda's back catalog. Growing up as a young PC and console gamer, I found myself allured to the idea of a story expansion In most cases, I either didn't have the resources, knowledge, or time to dive into these additional boxed offerings. However, despite my lack of technical prowess on the family PC, I still vividly remember staring into the gaming aisles of Costco, Circuit City, and Fry's Electronics, my mouth watering as I stood in awe at the amazing packaging of StarCraft, the Elder Scrolls, and Command & Conquer titles. On special occasions, I'd take home a big box PC game, return it home, install it, and pray that each of the discs installed smoothly. Worse is when I'd forget to check the minimum requirements on the back of the box and discover the game was not compatible with my version of Windows. I must admit, even as an adult now, I thought to myself, wait, how do I access the DLC? Is it on the disc? Is it in the cloud? Do I need to download it from an Xbox menu? Luckily enough, for those of you looking into revisiting Fallout 3 Complete Edition on modern Xbox systems, it's been fairly straightforward gaining access to the additional story content of Fallout 3. I missed out on the Xbox 360's generation and would hear stories of your Red Dead Redemptions, Oblivions, Bioshocks, and Fallouts. Now that I'm back into the Xbox ecosystem, I'll be slowly revisiting all of these titles and franchises. I prioritized this series because there's just something about Fallout's humor, world building, and depth that makes me so excited to submerge myself even deeper into the wasteland. Operation Anchorage. Released on January 27, 2009, Operation Anchorage broadcasts an urgent radio frequency by Defender Morrow calling the Wasteland Wanderer to Bailey's Crossroads. The story add-on is accessible at any time after exiting Vault 101. The core gameplay premise of Operation Anchorage sends players on a military simulation to fight in the liberation of Anchorage, Alaska from its Chinese communist invaders. I decided to experience all of Fallout 3's DLC story offerings after beating the initial released content, which required me to revert back to a slightly older save. I'm glad I took a tiny break in between the main content and this story add-on because I wasn't as frustrated as I would have been had I not realized that it would require a little bit of backtracking, but more on that later. Let's hear what lead DLC producer Jeff Gardenier had to say about Bethesda's first Fallout 3 story add-on. IGN's Eric Brudvig asks, the liberation of Alaska was hinted a lot during Fallout 3. What can we expect out of that simulated battle? Jeff Gardenier, in Operation Anchorage, the player will find themselves able to relive the famous liberation of Anchorage from Fallout lore. Inside a simulation similar to one found along the main quest of Fallout 3, once the player finds their way into the simulation, they'll be stripped of their resources and have to survive within the rules set up by the simulation's creators. The Chinese Red Army is everywhere, and the player will first have to secure the surrounding mountainsides and then fight their way into the Chinese base. The player will have to use a lot of their standard combat skills, along with several new tools that will only be available in the downloadable content. These include interactive strike teams under the player's command and unique armor, weapons, and other exotic gadgets. So, Operation Anchorage opens with the thrilling battle between the Brotherhood of Steel, Outcasts, and some super mutants. As the battle concludes, the player gains access to the VSS facility, or Virtual Strategic Solutions. The Outcasts attempt to unseal the door to the armory where particularly special loot is hidden. Fortunately for the Wasteland Wanderer, only a Pip-Boy 3000 can operate the simulation-based battle, which, if survived, allows the users to gain entry into the armory's locked doors. The lead producer describes the premise as a simulation of a battle that took place in the past. It is taking place within a computer. It's a what-if scenario created by the government in order to test different counter-offensives against the Red Menace. As a general premise, I don't love the concept of a simulation within a game, but considering that would be one of the few ways for players to explore a famous battle of Fallout lore, I'm more than happy to entertain a wacky idea as optional DLC. It poses a unique opportunity that ultimately provides a fun adventure. The beauty of the Fallout universe is that it can do these kinds of high conceptual gameplay premises without feeling too forced or out there. From a gameplay perspective, I really enjoyed Operation Anchorage's stealth tactical approach. I do wish that there is a bit more immersion within the combat and in simulation looting, but as an explorable environment and aesthetic, Operation Anchorage makes for a great playthrough. It certainly makes me excited to see more of a potential Operation Anchorage in the future Fallout games. Alaska would make for an incredible map full of quests and locations. I kind of see this DLC as a vertical slice as to what could be done with a more complete offering. I can't help but imagine what an anime adaptation of Operation Anchorage could look like. Even seeing the moments leading up to the invasion would be really exciting to see on screen. The Pitt, March 24th, 2009. In conversation with IGN, Gardenier lays out the framework for his team's second DLC offering, The Pitt. IGN asks, the second piece of downloadable content, The Pitt, takes place in Pittsburgh, as that city is a bit further away from the coast and the epicenter of DC. Is it in the same state of ruin as what we've seen in Fallout 3? Gardenier, while Pittsburgh wasn't directly hit in the nuclear onslaught, it still had years of decay. The surrounding water is also heavily irradiated, which tends to have an effect on those that live near it. The Pitt's official back of the case blurb states, travel to the post-apocalyptic remains of Pittsburgh and become embroiled in a conflict between slaves and their raider masters. Bethesda adds in its official description, explore a sprawling settlement ravaged by time, neglect, nuclear radiation, and moral degradation. The Pit is filled with morally gray choices, shady non-player characters, new enemies, new weapons, and much more. In a further conversation with Eurogamer, Jeff Gardenier describes The Pit as a more traditional Fallout 3 quest. It's full of morally gray choices, shady NPCs, and features another city ravaged by time, neglect, nuclear waste, and moral degradation. So, without spoiling too much of The Pit's intrigue, I will say that this was one of the more morally complex quests of Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. I found myself making surprising decisions. The beauty of the Pit DLC is in its tight focus, intrigue, and location. Even though it may not be as visually striking or diverse as Operation Anchorage, it definitely offers more of a complete package when it comes to the writing and development of its story. The Pit's environment feels uniquely Bethesda, and there's a comfort to its design. As I venture forward into the Fallout series, I find that Fallout 4 misses some of this charm. I hope to play through 1, 2, and Tactics after completing 4, and it will be really interesting to see the tone, style, and design of Interplay Entertainment's version of the Fallout universe. The main challenge of the Fallout franchise is nailing that tone and atmosphere, creating a sense of intrigue while also rewarding players for the dungeon crawling aspects without it feeling lifeless or like a laundry list of fetch quests and zones to clear. Broken Steel, May 5th, 2009. Jeff Gardenier tells Eurogamer that Broken Steel not only extends the game to level 30, it alters the core ending. It allows the player to continue exploring the ashen wasteland and see the fruits that are born or that die from their decisions. It will reprise several main characters and conclude some of the story threads left dangling. So, Broken Steel is in the height of Fallout 3's DLC offerings and is up there with New Vegas' own DLCs, Big Mountain and Lonesome Road. I just can't get enough of Fallout 3's main quest. I just love it. And offering an alternate ending while extending the player's level cap and bringing back main characters, I can't help but link Fallout 3's green-tinted goodness with my love for The Matrix. It just feels like both franchises at their best straddle both sides of comic book action with legitimate, intriguing post-apocalyptic drama. It's just a match made in heaven. I have a theory that Final Fantasy VII will be another mighty giant to add to my list of 2000 sci-fi greats. Point Lookout, June 23rd, 2009. Point Lookout will go down as perhaps my favorite Fallout DLC. Keep in mind, however, I have not finished Fallout 4's main story content or its DLC offerings yet. I know I sound a bit like a broken record, but what I look for when I play a game is that mood and atmosphere. Man, does Point Lookout not disappoint in that front? It just oozes style and charisma. It's almost akin to a Witcher title. Beautiful and swampy, familiar and strange. I love games like this that give me a mesmerizing tone while still throwing in some what the f*** moments thrown in for good measure, and you have me hooked. It just goes the perfect amount of deep, and this is certainly an add-on I will revisit and make sure I've seen all there is to see when it comes to Point Lookout. I really hope that the future Bethesda RPGs take note of how the questing was handled. No hand-holding, but plenty of guidance if you look in the right spots. It just feels so effortlessly paced. This is exactly why I'm doing this series. This is what little Spencer would have hoped to discover if I saw a boxed DLC sitting on a store shelf in 2009. Actually, I guess I wasn't that little, but you get the point. 16-year-old Spencer was tired of party games and shallow titles and would have loved a weird vibey island full of creatures, cults, and spy secrets. If I were to pair this DLC with a movie equivalent of Fine Wine and Cheese, I'd say Point Lookout pairs nicely with the film The Lighthouse. And now for our final DLC, Mothership Zeta, released on August 3rd, 2009. Mothership Zeta. What the f*** is there to say about this wild ride of both high highs and low ass lows? It's a great story add-on. It's weird, quirky, bizarre, and also exactly what you'd expect from the Fallout experience. Is it perfect? By no means. Was it memorable? Absolutely. I had a blast playing through this with Mo. She sat and helped me pick dialogue options, anxiously reminding me to save before diving deeper down a corridor, and collectively sighing as the challenges kept mounting before us. The characters were both intriguing as well as a bit grating. Not terrible, but I definitely feel as though there were a few choices that could have been made to enhance the drama a bit. Can you imagine if Starfield went with this direction for its sci-fi take on an RPG? I purposely avoided reading any information about DLC add-ons or even main story content because I love going in blind, and man, Mothership Zeta was such a surprise. I'd say maybe stick this one before Broken Steel and Point Lookout. It's a strange way to part with Fallout 3 if you're starting a new Game Plus or going for all the achievements. Definitely do a little bit of research to plop this in a spot where it serves as a fun side quest, but beware that it's longer than you think. And that is the Fallout 3 DLC Complete Edition. I had a blast going through this. I would say overall, I might have enjoyed this selection of DLC add-ons a little over the Fallout New Vegas DLC add-ons, but I'm curious to see what you think. A commenter did mention that Fallout New Vegas's DLC tie in with each other and the overall main quest. So if you're into that type of focus and depth and complexity as far as storytelling goes, then you might prefer that. I'd say that this is definitely a bit more shallow on those fronts, but it delivers on the atmosphere that I'm looking for and the gameplay style. And yeah, I just had an absolute blast. Next up, I will be playing through the main content of Fallout 4, so stay tuned and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for visiting the Yeti Den, and I will see you guys next time.